When did you know you were a music person?
Age 4.
Age 4?
Yeah, gathered around the radio. My mother, grandmother, my older brother. We would listen to WEUP radio here in Huntsville, and of course with my grandma, it was always the gospel music, the gospel program. And then, of course, when the R&B DJs came on, we would gather around and they would play our favorite songs, and kids in the family, kids in the neighborhood, we would gather around and, of course, try to sing. We were going to be the next Temptations and the next Four Tops, and then, of course, the next Jackson 5. And those were our dreams, as little children. And that was the birth of it, that lit a fire, and I just knew that one day I wanted to be a singer, wanted to be a performer. Only one problem, I had no talent, but I've been in love with it since I was a small child.
Another thing we share is the talent thing. So my mother was musical. She played the piano. She sang. I remember early on, my first record was a Doors record. But my moment was when I was 14, hanging out with some older guys, and their older brother came home, and he had seen the Allman Brothers play at Calhoun. And Out of the Wild South just came out, and he dropped that record, 4 big Utah speakers, cranked it to a level beyond, and I thought, how do I keep this in my life the rest of my life?
Yeah. Well, mentioning the record, that was another thing, going down to the record shops and buying. We didn't have a really nice stereo, but coming home, playing it on the console, but always the joy of cracking open that brand new vinyl,
Exactly.
and reading the liner notes.
Reading the liner notes, absolutely.
That was just the coolest experience.
Where did you buy records?
At Hornbuckle Music, and when in 1966 the mall opened, so we would go down to Woolworth's. Downtown on Church Street, there was a record shop called Aaron's. We had a police officer, Mr. Aaron Wright, and he had a record shop downtown, but that's where we got most of them.
I was buying at G.C. Murphy's.
Yeah, that is right, G.C. Murphy's and Woolworth's.
Absolutely.
I still have a vinyl album of the Oakwood College Aeolians that I bought in 1971 at Woolworth's in the mall.
Is that right?
Still have it in mint condition.
I still have my original Doors record.
How cool.
Yeah. How did you stay in music?
Well, in our neighborhood was a gentleman named Clarence Jones who promoted concerts, and we had a local funeral home director as well, Mr. R.E. Nims. Both of those guys would bring concerts to town, and as well as Mr. Leroy Garrett out at WEUP. So they would bring these concerts to Huntsville. Of course, the We Up Auditorium, the Elks Lodge. But Mr. Nims would promote concerts there. So us neighborhood kids would get the opportunity many times to go and just help set up. They would give us the old posters. I think Globe was the company, Globe posters, these neon colors that we would collect and put in our bedroom with the black light.
Nice.
But they would give us a few bucks and many times concert tickets as we got older. Because at the Elks we couldn't go to those concerts. But they would have us put flyers around town at record shops and on the telephone poles. We would put the concert posters up. So that lit a fuse in me from the promotion side of it to want to be involved with the live performances, and got to do that for many, many years, man. Many, many years.
Where all did you promote?
At, of course, as far as concerts I promoted.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so now we're later in life. So mostly at the Rock, which was the former Plush Horse.
Right.
It was a Christian nightclub. A partner and I, Shane Smith was his name, but he became the manager. And Dr. John Waples, who is a cancer doctor here in town now, had poured some money into that. So it became a Christian nightclub. So we brought in groups like the Channel Surfers. They had kind of a P-Funk sound, actually. A group called Bleach. We promoted that one at Butler High School. So many of the churches around town. The Madison County Coliseum, done concerts there. Partnered with Clarence Jones. We did the One Church tour with Fred Hammond, Hezekiah Walker. Mark Singletary was my partner in that one. The Evolution tour with a guy named Tone A, Byron Cage, Virtue, Trinity 5-7, Madison Mission Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Depot downtown, the Roundhouse.
Right.
We've done concerts there. So mainly the churches. So after I got out of the secular industry, I
Right.
promoted concerts at churches and those venues.
So let's go back a little bit. What was your first concert?
That I promoted?
No, that you went to.
That would have been the Jackson 5. I think it was 1970. Well, let me back up because now it's going to be gospel music. See, my mother would go to
Okay.
concerts at the We Up Auditorium. So as a child, we would go to concerts, people like Aretha Franklin, the O'Neill Twins, the Staple Singers, the Hawkins family. So WEUP was bringing these concerts in. So my mom called them sing-ins. So we would go to those. The Fairfield Four, Mighty Clouds of Joy. So that was my early foundation. Because
The Clouds of Joy, Aretha, and the Staple Singers.
Oh yeah, got to go see those folks as a child.
Wow.
As a child.
Wow.
As a child.
Okay.
So WEUP would bring those artists in.
Right.
And we would go and we'd be in church all day long and go to the singing that night. And so from Huntsville to Birmingham to Nashville, we would go to these shows that were at the, mainly held at the churches and small venues. Packed, man, like sardines and hot. So the ladies in there with the fans and,
It's a whole nother subject, but I don't think that most Huntsvillians know how historic WEUP is.
Right.
And one of these days we need to talk about
Yes,
that.
to share their story. Oldest African-American owned station in the state of Alabama. And then their role in the working the justice system, which allows black-owned stations to stay on the air 24/7. And Leroy Garrett and Viola Garrett, the founders of the station, spearheaded that movement, the Garrett Rule, which allowed black-owned stations to stay on the air 24/7 because they used to have to sign off the air at sunset.
I knew that story, but most don't, and I appreciate it
Yeah.
because I learned it from you.
Yeah.
And there would be the difference. The church was the influence that brought you into music.
Yeah, because you sang. Grandma forced us to sing in the choir. We had to sing in the children's choir. So the music and the gospel music, and so this was the traditional gospel music where we grew up in the Primitive Baptist Church and the AME, African Methodist Episcopal Church. So that was my foundation, the roots of that. Now, see, we're in the era of segregation. So we were moving constantly, and so from one side of town to the other. So in 69, 70, we moved from North Huntsville back to South Huntsville. We had lived in South Huntsville in 1965. So we moved back to South Huntsville, so I attended Whitesburg. So I grew up listening to R&B and gospel, of course. That was my foundation. So now I'm going to school with these white kids. So this is 1968, 1969, and 70, who were into rock and roll, groups like The Doors, and I introduced one of my 7th grade classmates to Parliament Funkadelic, and he introduced me to Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. So I fell in love with those artists, and Humble Pie and Mahogany Rush, and of course The Doors and the Rolling Stones, Janis Joplin. So I fell in love with the rock and roll music, and that just created a musical taste that was a gumbo that still exists today.
Exactly.
That my musical taste runs the gamut. It's just all over the place. Because also during that time, I fell in love with bluegrass because I love the Beverly Hillbillies theme. And so I went out and I would buy Earl Scruggs and Lester Flatt's albums. I have some of their bluegrass, and so I just fell in love with some of everything, man.
I think that's one of the greatest things today, and we've talked a little bit about it, is that because of the internet, because of the access, young people aren't stuck in genres.
Right.
At some point I was. I was not going to pull up playing the Jackson 5. I was going to pull up playing Marshall Tucker and Charlie Dan. That was just the nature of it. But it limited. And like I said, I wish I had seen Elvis.
Yeah.
But Elvis wasn't cool.
Right.
My parents went. But that was just kind of the way it was approached. But I was allowed to, Dwayne Allman was really great about going, this is an Elmore James song. Every song they played, he
Paying
would make
tribute
sure,
to.
and he would say, go listen to Elmore James. And that's what started me on the path of, who am I listening to? What did they listen to? What did they listen to?
Yeah.
And you get all the way back.
Yeah, who were those influences? And I can really appreciate that. I want to back up a minute, and hopefully they can edit this in. You had asked me about the early concerts. I forgot, at age 8.
At age
At
8.
8, I saw Parliament Funkadelic.
Really? Okay, now which tour?
Well, this wasn't any major tour back then. You know, they were
Okay.
playing the little small nightclubs and all. So before they were famous, this was before the Aqua Boogie and the Flashlight. It was not really popular to like that band. I remember my brother and I were ridiculed for liking that band, you know. But they were at the Elks. That was one of the concerts that they had brought in, and we lived about 4 blocks away. And we went over during the day to help with the setup and all. Of course, we couldn't stay for the concert. So we went and sneaked back over there at night, and we sneaked in through the kitchen and watched through the kitchen door, watched them on stage. So they were dressed risque, little glimpses of that. But 1968 here in Huntsville, Funkadelic. So this was before they became popular, because a lot of folks weren't really into them back then. White folks didn't listen to them, and black folks thought they were strange. So a lot of guys who were stationed at Redstone,
Right.
a lot of the Army guys were into them. Got those guys who smoked a little weed, you know, they were into Parliament Funkadelic. And then, of course, after Mothership Connection came out, they became popular.
I cannot believe Parliament Funkadelic played the Elks.
Oh yeah, they played the Elks Club, the Shylights. Tyrone Davis, Millie Jackson, so a lot of those bands back in the day. Ike and Tina Turner, Fred Wesley played in a band that was one of the house bands there for a while. Master Sound was their name. And of course, Fred Wesley was James Brown's band director.
Right.
So James would get a number of his musicians out of Huntsville back then. The Crimes Brothers, Richard, he had a twin brother, I forget his name, but actually played for James Brown for a number of years, wrote some songs and Make It Funky and during that era, 1970s. But that Huntsville Foundation there. But I just had to put that in there. I just remembered about being 8 years old and seeing Funkadelic.
Well, that interests me at 8 years old, because I was going to ask, what was your first secular concert?
Funkadelic.
Funkadelic.
Yeah, Funkadelic was my first secular, and I was hooked. So anything that came out of that camp, I was just hooked. You know, everything from Bootsy's Rubber Band to Parlette to Brides of Funkenstein, Quasar, Mutiny, a lot of those bands that were birthed out of Parliament Funkadelic, which has roots in Huntsville with the influence, because we can touch on that a little later, with Sun Ra's influence, with the Afrofuturism.
Right, I knew that was Now, I was Parliament Funkadelic, but not till the Mothership Connection.
Yeah.
Now, I was listening before that, but I never saw them before that show at the Civic Center.
Well, prior to that, which George calls silly seriousness with Parliament, with the Mothership Connection, Parliament Funkadelic's music, you weren't just going to a concert. And here's the thing about it. They were operas. They were funk operas. So each album had a theme. After Mothership Connection, each album had a theme. And so when you went to the show, you're watching a storyline. Of course, with Mothership Connection, you had Dr. Funkenstein, who came to Earth to rescue dance music from the Blahs. That was his whole concept. Yeah. And his nemesis was Sir Nose Devoid of Funk, who refused to sing.
Right.
So they shot him with the bop gun, and then he danced. So that was the whole theme of that album, getting Sir Nose Devoid of Funk to dance. The next album was the Aqua Boogie, the album Motor Booty Affair, where Sir Nose decided to escape Dr. Funkenstein, and so he goes into the ocean. And that was the whole deal with Aqua Boogie. He says, I can't swim, I never learned to swim. And so then his whole thing was, I'll never dance. So Sir Nose, Dr. Funkenstein is chasing him to get him to dance. And then the following album was, I think, Glory Holla Stupid. So they went into space. So whole concept of that. Prior to that, Parliament Funkadelic, their music had a lot of social consciousness, because the album America Eats Its Young,
Chocolate City.
Chocolate City was the third album.
Right.
So the first one was Osmium, then Up for the Downstroke,
Yep.
and then Chocolate City.
Okay.
And so those albums had songs that gave us social consciousness. The Up for the Downstroke album had a song called Presence of a Brain. Got to check that song out.
I will.
And then remember, George was a writer for Motown.
I remember that.
Because one of the Jackson 5's hits was I Betcha. George wrote that song.
I did not know that. I knew he wrote. I never have looked into what
Yeah,
he wrote.
he wrote that song. Yeah, but he remember Parliament was a doo-wop group. They weren't the strange stuff. They were a doo-wop group.
That whole album as a full theme, tell a story, create a show, we lost that.
Yeah.
But that was the nature of the industry at that time. And that was the thing that I think that a generation missed. It became singles and it became this one song. But that was what we loved, was sitting down, whether alone or with friends, and playing the whole thing.
Just going to touch on that. I was going to ask you, was when an album came out, was the hit song always your favorite song on there?
Hardly ever.
Hardly ever for me either. I would go into the deep tracks, man. You know, or the B side on the single for the single. But as far as the complete album, you know, many times the third, fourth, fifth track that no one else liked would be my favorite song.
Yeah, my business partner Mike will tell you it's the third track.
The third.
He has reel-to-reels that he created of the third song on an album, and he would create an 8-hour playlist of just the third song on his favorite albums.
Yeah.
Because that was where it was. But we didn't get to hear those on the radio. We had to go find.
Right. The album.
We had to have the album. We had to, and because what we got to hear on the radio was just hits.
Yeah.
Until I actually just recently met Jim Record. He was the first one who was allowed to play album-oriented rock.
Yeah.
On WAHR, and we want to bring him in and
Jim's a cool
tell
guy.
those stories.
Jim's a cool guy.
Oh, you brought Jim here. I'd forgotten you brought Jim here. That's how I met him.
Yeah.
But I am so excited to hear that. And from our, we've still got some of the local DJs around, and I can't wait to hear their stories too.
Something else regarding opening that album. I mean, you talk about great joy of opening that album and pulling out the liner notes and reading, you know, who produced it, who arranged it. And I got to the point where, from reading and finding out that so-and-so produced this track or so-and-so arranged this track, I got to the point that I could listen to a song and pretty much tell who produced it and who arranged it. And, you know, that I can't do it now, but, but back then, you know, I could listen to a song, that's so-and-so's production. Or you would hear even certain vocals in the background, and you knew that, so-and-so's involved with that, you know.
Well, that was one of the places I got to in my life was I would go see Bob Dylan, not to see Bob Dylan, but to see G.E. Elliott play guitar. I would go to James Taylor to watch Leland Sklar play bass.
Wow.
Simply from a standpoint of knowing they were on all my favorite albums. It was this small group of incredibly talented people that were the Wrecking Crew or the Funk Brothers.
Right.
And I've been blessed to see both of those groups put together on a stage for tributes and listen to them.
I've seen the Funk Brothers a couple of times, and then I'm not sure if I was sharing it with you or someone else, but back in the day, I got to see the Muscle Shoals Horns. They opened for someone like the Commodores or something like that, but saw them back in the day. And then I was thrilled because one of the pictures I took of them in concert at the Von Braun Center, those outfits are now at the Alabama Music Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Yeah, so and I went out there to see that. So just getting to see some really, really amazing musicians back in the day, because again, the headliner was the big name.
That's right.
But these musicians, I'd be at a concert like, oh man, that's so-and-so on the drum. Huh? Who's that guy? Like,
well, one of the concerts I saw in 1975 was the Eagles. The opening band was Poco. Timothy Schmidt, now of the Eagles, was in Poco at that particular show.
I never got to see the Eagles or Poco, but I saw the Doobie Brothers perform at Milton Frank. But the first time I saw them at the Von Braun Center, Michael McDonald, I think, had just joined the band.
Yeah.
So I got to see them. and the opening act, I forget who was advertised, but they canceled. And the opening act was Mother's Finest.
Really?
Yeah. So
One of the things I found recently as I was going back, I'm finally bringing some things out of storage, was that Doobie Brothers ticket. There is on YouTube an audio recording of that concert.
here in Huntsville?
Yeah.
How about
Done
that?
here at the Civic Center. And it states specifically. Also found the poster for the Eagles and Poco. And I paid $5 to go in that show. That was the other great part about when we grew up.
Yeah, the ticket, but we didn't make that much either.
Yeah, well, I'm aware of that. But I could mow
But
3
yeah,
yards and I was good. I'd get in the show.
Yeah, Commodores. Remember Commodores at A&M, $3. Saw Sounds of Blackness at A&M before Optimistic had just released them and a group called Flight Time, who was on the Sound of Minneapolis.
Right.
But they were at A&M. I think $5 for a ticket. Just the good old days. You know?
Yeah, I relive them regularly.
Man, the good old days.
So where people now don't know even where the Coliseum was, or what it was. Who all did you see at the Madison? It was at where Sam's is
Where
now.
Sam's is out University. Of course, at Jackson 5.
Right.
The last concert I saw there was a contemporary Christian group called the Second Chapter of Acts. Oh my goodness, so many bands. ZZ Top was there. I didn't get to see them, but my best friend got to go see them. ZZ Top, that was 1972.
Okay.
Because at 12 years old. See, back then, you could go hang out, and I had older friends, 16, 17, 18 years old, so they were driving, and we got to go hang out. And, many times we would sneak into a show. Or if you knew someone working the backstage.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was best.
The Coliseum, Jackson 5.
I saw Edgar Winter. I saw Edgar Winter and Rick Derringer play Frankenstein before it was ever recorded in that.
That was 70, was that 72, 73
I'm
in there?
thinking somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to that one. I didn't have a ride out there.
Yeah.
But man, James Brown, I didn't get to see him.
Wow.
Oh man, a lot of contemporary Christian artists back in the day. Group Special Blend, which evolved and became Take Six, because in the later years, by the early '80s, I was doing primarily Christian music.
Sure.
But there.
Yep. You mentioned Milton Frank earlier. People don't realize concerts were held at Milton
sir.
Frank.
Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Foghat.
Got to go there, and then even if you didn't get in, you could just hang out in the parking lot and hear the music.
Yeah.
Oh, another one I forgot at the Coliseum got to see was Nazareth, Buddy Miles, and Deep Purple. That was 72. Yeah, that was 72.
You were going earlier than I was.
Well,
in a lot of cases.
Getting to hang out with older friends, and then we had another older friend who got to go to Tuscaloosa to see Led Zeppelin. And I really wanted to go to that. And Jimi Hendrix, got to go see Jimi. I didn't see him, but
but
friends who were getting to go. And they tell you how great the concert was.
Sure.
So you made sure you didn't miss any at the next one.
I remember the older guys. I didn't go, but the 1970 Atlanta Pop Festival.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was a big thing.
That was a big one.
That was a big thing. Janis Joplin had just left Big Brother.
Right.
They came in 1970, and I didn't get to go to that one. That was at the Center Theater. So there were concerts at the Center Theater on Trina Boulevard, which still stands.
Well, is that Merrimack Hall?
No, this is at the corner of 9th Avenue and Trina Boulevard.
I know exactly where you're talking about. Yeah, we looked at that building.
Did you? Yeah.
We thought to try to help restore it.
Something needs to be done to that. But yeah, they were there in 1970. Janice had just left, I think a few months prior.
And the way I had always heard it was she played Merrimack Hall. She'd played the
She might
gym.
have.
She may have.
May have.
That was just the way I had heard the story was that was where, and that's why Merrimack became what it is today.
She is very well. I don't have any old ads from there. Could maybe see if I could find one. But Johnny Cash performed at the old Dallas Armory, which is now the Bud Kramer. It's a part of that Children's Advocacy Center.
Right.
They had concerts there, but I was really young then and couldn't go to those. But Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins.
I've read an article, a review, and I think it was at the Coliseum, but Johnny Cash, Perkins, couple other the big guys from the time played the Coliseum, and it was not well attended, was the way the review read.
But they had people like Chubby Checker play out there. Of course, Ray Charles. I didn't get to see Ray Charles there, but he came to the old Sheraton.
Okay, I saw him at the concert hall.
So Sheraton. You had Funkadelic even played the old Sheraton. It became Joe's Music Hall.
No kidding.
Or Joe's House of Entertainment. Joe Douglas,
right?
Who managed Frankie Beverly and Mays for a number of years. Joe had a nightclub out University in the old Sheraton, and it was it had Parliament Funkadelic out there, and of course they'd bring Frankie Beverly and Mays. All of their shows were usually at the Von Braun Center until they started doing concerts at the Blues Festival and whatnot. But
you mentioned the Plush Horse.
Yeah.
And I may have gone when it became more secular.
Mm-hmm.
Who else did you see up there? I saw Leon Russell.
Ray Charles, Jackie Wilson. I didn't go to many of the. Jackie Wilson was there. I think 75.
Jackie
1975.
Wilson.
Yeah.
See,
Those are those shows
stories
we would
I
sneak
don't
in.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was well versed in this.
Yeah, Jackie Wilson performed there. But the others were at the Elks now. Those were after I got a little older.
Right.
So Mel and Tim, they had a song Starting All Over Again. Johnny Guitar Watson. Remember him?
Yeah. Oh,
Johnny
absolutely.
Guitar Watson. These were the Elks Club. The Ebony Club, Bobby Blue Bland, out Madison, Alabama. Then they had the Orbit Lounge. So you had a lot of these artists, some of these little hole-in-the-wall places.
Right. Well, later on, it's always amazing to me who play. You were talking bluegrass.
Yeah.
And I was going to horse pens and seeing Flatt and Scruggs and Doc Watson and Vassar Clements all in the same weekend. And because they were playing dual nights, we were camping up there. So you could go sit by their campers and just listen to them play at night. And now I realize the level of legend.
Yes, sir.
Ricky Skaggs was literally a child prodigy with Bill Monroe. And now I look at him and I feel pretty old.
Well, another artist, I knew the name, I knew some of his music, but mid-70s, I absolutely fell in love with, I knew he was a great guitarist, and that's Chet Atkins. Yes. His Certified Guitar Player series, the CGP series of this man is musical genius. So
I'm gonna tell a quick Chet Atkins one. My business partner, Brian Bentley, his father-in-law, let me see, it would be his grandfather. Anyway, a generation of the Samples family was, let's say, on his deathbed. And the family said, what else? He said, I want to hear Chet Atkins play, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of the song, one more time.
Wow.
The song had never been recorded. And someone from the family reached out to Chet Atkins. He recorded it on a cassette and sent it to the family.
Man.
Isn't that something?
That's treasure. Glenn Campbell is another just phenomenal guitar player. These guys, because we put them in a box many times with the genre of music that they were known for, whether it was country or whatever. But when you see these guys sit down together, a Johnny Cash and a B.B. King, or some of these rock stars, and they sit and they jam together, man. One other venue we can't forget, because I know we're pressing on time. After Dark, Buddy Miles, Ohio Players, War, all performed there. Got to see them all in the early '80s. At the After Dark, after disco was no longer cool, they started promoting bringing those groups back. Yeah. And with Ohio Players, there might have been 100 people there.
So Jim Parker, our local songwriter hero, Jim actually played. He started in Texas, the same converted transmission shop, and the same producer, Norman Petty, that Buddy Holly worked with, and then Jim went to California. And he presented some of the songs to the Wrecking Crew, and they said, that's good, let's record that. He had backing him Glenn Campbell on guitar and Leon Russell on piano when he was a young man.
Whoa. That's cool.
I know, that is cool. That's beyond cool in my world. But Jim's life is just a whole nother episode. But that was where the start. He also picked up a member of the Manson family hitchhiking and dropped him
Oh,
off at the
mercy.
farm.
The rest is history there.
The rest is history there.
Wow. Now, you have rubbed elbows with some heavyweights in the industry. And
I have been a fan a long time.
yeah.
And there are those in this town. One of them, we'll just stay on the young stories.
Okay.
So you're familiar with Steppenwolf,
Yes.
and you're familiar with a song called The Pusher.
Yes, sir.
And I was playing that apparently where my dad could hear it. My dad would always knock. He did not knock when he heard that song. And so the door flies open, and it was, "What are you playing?" And I said, "Dad, it's Steppenwolf." And fortunately, my mom was standing behind him, and she went, "They're such nice boys."
I love it.
He spun around and went, "Mary, what are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, they are." Larry Byram, the guitarist for Steppenwolf, his mother did my mother's hair.
I love it. So that saved you. on
Got
that
me
one.
out of that one. He looked at me and said, "The rest of the album, but not that song."
Okay. I thought you were going to have an earache my eye story for like Cheech and Chong.
It was close.
I have one. My grandmother came into my room, and I'm blasting some Master of Reality and Paranoid with Black Sabbath, and she knocks on my door. "William Henry, turn that mess off. What are you listening to?" And I pulled up. I think it was. Lord of this World, one of the songs, and I'm reading the lyrics to her, and I made it seem like it was a Christian song. And so she's like, "Okay, well, turn that down." Got my
Well
grandma-
done.
And then I played this song, Black Sabbath, to my grandma,
I remember my mom, anything that was a catchy tune was
Yeah.
fine. Very late in life, Dr. Hook freaking at the Freakers Ball while we were traveling, and she's just singing away, not a clue what's coming out of her mouth. She knows all the words.
We were the same way with some of the songs, not knowing what they were talking about. Forgive the lyric, but there was one. We thought the band was saying that if you didn't have a head, you couldn't get into the concert. You couldn't,
Right.
but there was no head, no backstage pass. And says the back door man said no head, no backstage pass. We didn't know what they were talking about, until we got a little older.
Right.
That was crazy
Figured it out.
stuff, man. But I tell you, I'm blessed to have traveled the course musically that I have with the influences that I don't rule out any genre. I love lyrics. I love a beautiful arrangement. And so I could be in a mood that I'm listening to some head-banging stuff, but not if the lyrics aren't, if they're not crazy,
Yeah.
too crazy. But to have...
Well, I think we were both also so lucky, blessed to live in a time period
Yeah.
where all this magic was happening. And I think we're in another one.
Yeah.
I love a lot of new music.
This rebirth, even in our hometown, in our beloved Huntsville, Alabama, this renaissance. That's why
Exactly.
when 2020 rolled in, I thought, man, this is cool. Now we can relive the roaring 20s, and celebrate Huntsville and celebrate the culture and celebrate this new life, and with even city leaders embracing all the different genres of music and folks being creative and supporting one another. That's the thing, supporting live music.
That's kind of the whole thing here.
Now, if we back up a little bit, I know we're pressed for time here as well, but concerts here in Huntsville,
Right.
the community at large, I don't think realize how that works. Many of them thought that the city brings in these concerts,
Exactly.
not realizing promoters bring concerts.
Exactly.
They're investing their money. So we have to go out and buy the tickets
We do.
because they pay a deposit to the artist, who then, whatever the agreement is, whatever the percentage is. So if the concert doesn't sell, that promoter still has to pay the artist. You got 100 people in a 5,000 seat venue, that promoter has lost money.
Exactly.
And so we've got to support the concerts. And they, many think, well, the city brings these concerts, they've got the money to do it. No one can take a loss on this. So, so the relationship between promoter and concert goer. We've got to bring that together.
bring it all.
Bring shows we want to see, but hey, when we bring the show, y'all come out and support it.
Exactly.
Because I'll buy tickets to shows that I'm not even going to, but I'll gift someone because I want to support the promoter and having good faith to bring this event to our city. So,
Another music man you probably know is Greg Screws.
yeah.
And Greg's statement is, I can't retire, I've still got tickets to buy.
Yeah.
And I love that attitude.
Right. And so many times folks would hit the promoter up, hey man, got free tickets. It's like, come on, y'all, support this guy. Got to pay for this show,
Let's do this again.
Please do.